Right, Mark and Lisa, keep it hands.
Here we go, recording in progress.
Fabulous.
Right, admit me, people.
I do love this moment because I'm always like get very excited and wonder what Pamela's been doing all morning that's driven her up the wall or not driven her up the wall. And
Yeah.
I did a little write-up this morning on our Silverstone Day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I actually weirdly a bit soft, but that I actually felt quite emotional about that when I started talking to the industry about what a practice manager is. I
Yeah.
actually felt a little bit, I've gone a bit soft in my old age, but it felt really um like I was, really flying that flag. Um
Right. Yeah, it's nice. You connected very well with people, so hopefully it's would have made an impact.
well, I didn't want people to feel, it's not don't feel sorry for us because we love it,
Yeah.
because we wouldn't do it if we did it. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but it doesn't mean that we don't carry a heavy load sometimes, and just
Yeah.
that bit of recognition's nice. But
Yeah.
anyway, we have people, Christina and Pamela,
Hey.
welcome. And for everybody that's watching this, because you didn't get a lunch, because we know you'd wanted to join us, even despite not having any food all day. Thank you for listening to us. So we are joined with Mark Topley. Really, really good to talk to you, Mark, because I know you've got so many good words of wisdom for practice managers and anybody managing teams. I'm going to let you describe yourself and what you do, Mark, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending on when you're watching. So yeah, Mark Topley, I got into the world of dentistry about 20 years ago. And obviously when I was 15. And since then I haven't been able to get out because I kind of found that dentistry was a really interesting sector to be part of, some fantastic people in it. The reason I got in was because I was working with a charity called Bridge to Aid that I worked with for about 15 years until 2017 and then left, and I've been running my own consultancy since then, essentially helping people to create places where people love to come to work. And that doesn't mean sort of sort of comfy, touchy feely environments, but environments which have a lot of trust, a lot of candor, a lot of fun. Development is expected, so sort of high challenge, high support environments where the business can thrive because that's really important, but the people can thrive as well and ultimately provide a better service for patients through it. So that's essentially who I am.
Thanks, Mark. We had a little chat, and we were talking about this. It's such a lot that we could talk about. But one of the things that is cropping up with me, people coming and talking to me about it, and through the association, is the challenge of how do we create culture? Because for me, it's not a thing. It should be it's like an ongoing thing, like compliance,
Yep.
and like recruitment.
Hmm.
So for me, culture is about what we do every day, because I have owners talk to me about, um, well, they're getting paid, somebody getting paid to do a job seems to be
Hmm.
that's it.
Yeah.
And you must obviously work with a lot of practices that where they bring you in to go, Mark, make our
Hmm.
place wonderful.
Yeah.
So where would you start?
Well, I think the big thing to realize is that the chances are that the people that are saying that, well, we're paying them a wage and so therefore you expect X, Y, Z, are probably of a generation where that's how they grew up. So I do a lot of work at the moment on different generations and their expectations of work, what people want from work. And certainly if you go back, my dad, sort of, baby boomer, it was all very much job for life. Loyalty was expected. There were clear hierarchies. A job was a job. You hang on to it because it's security, and you didn't have much choice. There wasn't much sort of movement around in terms of like people jumping careers and stuff. so that's where some of those people, and then the next generation down, which is ours, which is kind of like Gen X, we kind of grew up again with a very sort of resilient and independent kind of upbringing, latchkey kids, the Thatcher years, growing up through the financial crises and all that sort of stuff. It meant that we were kind of expected to crack on with it as well. And again, there is that kind of leak into that generation of, well, job's a job. What's really interesting is what shifted in the last sort of 20 to 30 years is that both the millennial generation, so people who are now kind of turning 40 down to sort of mid 30, mid 20, late 20s, that generation was the first generation which people call purpose led. And so they were not just about the job. The job was a part of life and a means to an end. It wasn't the whole thing. And if they were gonna do a job, then they wanted to feel like they were being developed. They wanted to feel like they were being appreciated, that they could make a contribution. And that's because they were raised by people who said you can achieve what you want, you can do these things, and they, things like giving out a prize for coming last and all that sort of stuff. That was all very much part of that upbringing. And so now when they come into the workplace, they've got very, very different expectations. And I think if you're going to sum it up, I think the clearest way to think about it is that it used to be that a job was a job and it was a transaction. So I give you my work, you give me some money, and that's that. It's kind of like very much, I don't really want to know anything about you or where you come from or what your home life's like. That's what it's like. What's changed now is that employment is much more like this, where people come together for a period of time. And during that period of time, and the people who are being employed, they're looking for development, for fulfillment, for purpose, yes, for pay as well, because particularly with the lower paid areas of the sector, the cost of living crisis has made a big impact on that. And so therefore you have to be paying competitive wages. But outside of that, people want a decent culture. They want to feel appreciated. They want to be developed, and they want a sense of, I like coming to work because it's part of my life. And they're not as loyal, quite understandably, because a job isn't a job for life anymore. They've seen their parents and their parents' generations go through, wide scale redundancies, the 2008 crash, all that sort of stuff, where people were just treated as a commodity and sort of dumped out of a business when the numbers didn't add up. And so they're like, well, why should I commit to something which doesn't appreciate me? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it's what is. And Gary Vaynerchuk says it very well. He says, that you've got to realize that our staff our teams no longer work for us, we work for them. And if you can get that mindset of this is a partnership, yes, I'm the boss, yes, I'm paying the wages, etc., then you're much more likely to get engagement and people to walk with you and to contribute and bring their energy and their engagement to your business. Long answer.
No, it's so important that we do look at the generational differences, and particularly, like you said before, the setup of many of our practices involves lots of different
Mhm.
workers at different times in their lives, and um, it's not to say, you've got your older generations, younger, and they sit separate. It's working out how to blend, because when you've
Yeah.
got things like different values that you've been involved with, it's
Yeah.
it's difficult sometimes. I've heard so many times people say, oh well, these days, we're back in my day, we wouldn't get away with that. And back in, and my answer to that a lot of the time is, right, well, things are different now. We also have, the lovely people like CQC and,
Mhm.
the regulators that, they were always there, but not in the way that they are now.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, in some ways things are easier. College, when they're on apprenticeships, they get a full day a week. We have to give them a full day a week to do their college work in work
Mhm.
time. We didn't get that. We had to do it at night or on a Sunday. And, it's not that it should be, they've not earned it if it wasn't as hard as what we had it. but things that they've got to do now, actually, some of them are harder than what we had. So it's trying to get that message to the team, isn't it? But I do see quite often a older generation and younger generation clash in practices. We can't force people to like people. How would you suggest we sort of navigate that?
Well, you got to start with understanding, and you got to start with curiosity and helping people to understand the the viewpoints and the drivers for different generations in both directions. So it's really important that, older generations appreciate that, growing up fully digital, if you're a Gen Z, so you're kind of like, you're born up to 2012, you've never known a time without smartphones. Um, you're always on. Everything is at your fingertips. You don't need to know anything because you can look it up. And so the pace at which those guys are living is very, very different. Now, Damien, can't remember his surname, the guy that does the High Performance podcast, he says, it's really important to remember that given the same life experience and given the same upbringing as somebody else had, you'd probably react exactly like they do. So if I'm a mid-50s bloke, Gen Xer, if I'd grown up, if I was born in the mid-90s, chances are I would think the same way and act the same way as that younger generation does now, because of what they've been exposed to and the parenting styles they've been exposed to, the technology they've been exposed to. So the first thing is just to shine a light on that and say, look, guys, these guys aren't lazy or, entitled or whatever you might think. They just are, because they are the product of the world that came before them, which, by the way, you're a part of. And so the way that you speak, the way that you spoke to your kids, and the way that you raised your kids, and the society that your kids grew up in, that's what shaped them. There's a really funny video I use in the sessions that I do on this, and it's called a brief history of Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. And it kicks off with a 2024 newspaper headline of, nobody wants to work anymore, and then a couple of lines after it. Anyway, this video goes all the way back to the 1870s, which is the first time we can find a headline that says, gosh, the younger generation, they just don't want to work anymore. So if for the last 150 years we've been saying the same thing, it's not that the new generations are lazy. It's that every generation has always thought that the generations that's coming after it is lazy, but they're not. They're different. And you've got to, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a principal, you've got to find a way to switch those people on. You've got to learn which buttons to press, and they're not going to be the same buttons that would engage you. So I think shining a light on that, getting some understanding. When I do sessions, we have a lot of fun together. We banter about, we take the mickey out of the boomers, we take the mickey out of the Gen Zs, and everybody has a bit of a laugh about it. But then we bring it down to a serious level, which is what, like if I'm a Gen Z, what do I want, my Gen X practice manager to understand about what it's been like to grow up in my era, and what do they want me to understand, and how can we then adjust the way that we work together so that we're not clashing, we're understanding.
No, that's brilliant. I think it's, making sure that everybody also understands, the goal, what's the end goal with practices, what's the vision, what are we aiming for, where are we, where do we want to be, and actually realizing that it takes all these different people with different skills and personalities to actually get us there. So
Yeah.
actually a shared goal rather than a disjointed, well, they'll do this, but they won't do that. And
Yeah.
you can see it, can't you? I think when
Yeah.
you're in the thick of it, even in my practice, there's like 46 of us, so it's a lot of different personalities and a lot of different generations to kind of blend. But having a shared goal actually doesn't matter who does what and how we'll get there, as long as we're doing it together and we all understand that. So yeah, it's difficult. And the point you made about the technology, many practice managers get very frustrated because, you know, the mobile phone situation crops up so many times in the conversations. You know, do we make them have them in the lockers? Well, taking a phone off those younger ones, sometimes it's like chopping the hands off. So it's about boundaries, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, we don't want to police people, do we?
No, and I think the phone's an interesting one. I mean, again, I think it's important to have a conversation about it. And, you know, if you can talk about, you know, what do you think the impact is of somebody using their phone in the surgery when a patient's in the room, and get them to talk about it, get to say, well, you know, maybe they feel this way. Okay, so is that how we want them to feel? Is that the standard? You know, you were talking about the vision of where we're trying to get to. I think the other thing that's really key is to have an agreed standard. Because once there's an agreed standard, there's something to go to people. Hang on a minute, that behavior doesn't line up with that we've all agreed to. So you're not saying you're wrong, you're saying you're not meeting the standard, which we've all agreed to. So if the standard is we want the patients to feel, you know, valued and seen, then how does that marry up with you using your phone in the surgery, or wherever it might be? I think so. I think it's encouraging people to think for themselves, have some clear boundaries. You know, if people are sitting on TikTok behind reception and, you know, guffawing their way through the day, that's clearly not acceptable, and you've got to do something about that. But, you know, a lot of my clients, we set up so that their task machines, so that all the tasks that need to be done each day, they actually sit on an app on their phone, so they can have their phone and they use it as part of their work.
Yeah.
But then, so that's treating them like adults, saying you need this for this, but, you know, let's have a talk about, and let's be aware of what the ramifications are. And then only then, because then you're not, I think the biggest problem you can do, the biggest mistake often we can make, is to create a policy for one person's behavior. So if you've got one person who's not playing ball, you don't create a policy, you talk to that person because everybody else is on board with it. But
Yeah.
have those principles and those boundaries, rather than, you know, no phones.
I think, yeah, and there's so many different situations that we sort of come across, whether it's nails, nail saga, um, you know, what we standard we're expecting. This is our standard. This is what we expect you to meet. This is
Yeah.
why it's important, and this is, you know, potentially repercussions of if those standards aren't met. I think it's
Mhm.
just, and we did. Me and you did a talk at the dentistry show in London recently, didn't we? And we
Mhm.
decided to do a topic called let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I love that topic. And we basically had three scenarios each, didn't we? And
Mhm.
I could have sat there and listened to you for the whole session, um, because your approach to, I think one was underperformance, one was eye rolling, so in a meeting, so attitude.
Mhm.
I can't remember what was the other one.
Hey, pay rise.
Pay rise, yes. Um, and I just wondered if you just sort of, you know, the approach, the calmness, the methodical way that you encourage people to have these conversations,
Mhm.
you made it sound so blinking easy. And I know you know it's not, because you know you're there supporting us that have to go in and then do it.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if you could give us a bit of a treat in
Yeah.
the session as to kind of what you did cover in that session, because it was really, really good. And people actually said that was wonderful, because what you did was give me a taste of something that was an interesting, relative, relatable subject. And I
Mhm.
want more,
Yeah.
which is hopefully what we do well as speakers
Yeah.
when we get it
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, you know, the biggest thing for me with any kind of those conversations is being really clear on what it is that you want to get out of it. So you and resisting the urge to try and be right and show that you're right, and get the other person to admit that you're right. Because if you start off on that footing, then you're going to make life a lot more difficult for yourself, because you are going into a conversation with a confrontational attitude, which is only going to lead to defensiveness. And once somebody's on the back foot, you know, we're very good at protecting ourselves. So we'll argue black is white, you know, rather than say, oh yeah, you're right with that. So I think the first thing is always getting clear on what we want to get out of the conversation, and then going in with curiosity. So I want to understand what's going on rather than I just seen you do this and that's not okay. So it's that whole observations thing. So I think some of the things that we visited was curiosity was really important. So find out first what it is that's really going on. Respond with empathy. So and that's not saying, oh yeah, that's so hard for you. I can understand why that might be difficult for you, and then come in with authority. So, however, we've got this standard here, and on this occasion your behavior has not lived up to it, so let's talk about how we're going to make that better in the future. So I think when it comes to performance, it's very clearly, this, what I just observed, this, tell me about it, tell me what's gone on, not why did you do it, because that's going to put people on the defensive as well. It's separating the person from the bit from the behavior. Because if we said, that was wrong, you're accusing the person, you're using a why question, which puts people on defensive. Whereas if you can separate them, I was saying, I just saw that happen. What's going on there? Or what was it that led you to do that? Avoid why at all costs, because that won't take you in the right direction. And then when they have a chance to explain, you're not arguing about it. You're saying, okay, yeah, I understand that's difficult. You didn't have much time today. However, blah, 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 how are we going to make it better in the future? So empathy, authority, and a plan, I think are really key ones. When it comes to behavior, I think it's the similar sort of thing, but you're also talking about the impact, because when people understand the impact that their behavior has, so eye rolling or, cutting people off, or whatever it might be, whatever kind of behavior it might be, is talking again, what's going on? Okay, I understand you were bored in the meeting. However, can you think about what the impact would be on the person that's leading it? What do you think it does for the people around you? And that doesn't marry up with this standard we've got. And so therefore, I would like you to change this going forward. Now, of course, if people don't change, then you've got to go to consequence as well, because you want people to change their behavior, but you want them to do it because they understand and because they see the impact rather than anything else. And I think with pay's always a difficult one. And again, it's curiosity. I need a pay rise, otherwise I'm leaving. Okay, so tell me what's behind that. What's going on? What is it? What is it you need? Oh well, I've got this problem at home and that problem at home. Okay, so let me just. I understand that's really difficult. Totally understand why you need a rise. Let's just explain how we go about giving pay rises. And then you talk about what your policy is and your procedure. And, most people, I think, will give pay rises either for additional productivity or additional responsibility. And you explain, so how can we get you towards that? How can we get you in the direction of getting that rise that you're after? Let's plot the steps to get there. So you're not saying no, you're saying, I understand. This is how we do it. How can we get you to what it is that you want? And then, then they've got a choice. But you're not in that kind of like, oh, what did they leave? They leave. The chances are, if they're leaving for like an extra 50p an hour or an extra pound an hour, then that's probably not the issue anyway. But yeah, those are some of the things. Did I get that right, Lise? Was that what I talked about? Because it was 2 weeks ago now, and I'm quite old.
Yeah, no, it was. And one of the biggest takeaways, was the skill of setting out what you wanted to achieve from having the conversation. I
Mm,
thought that was brilliant. And I guess most of us do it in a way, but actually, I was thinking, this word purpose, actually purposely doing things
mhm.
can help us practice managers to go into these situations with a whole different confidence. And because we don't want to feel like, oh, the boss and the one that nags and the one that, but we also have a very difficult position where we have to address these things. So these sort of things that we can put in our toolkit, I
I
just
think
think
you've got
amazing.
you've got to know what you want to get out of it. If you don't go into a conversation knowing what your ideal outcome is, then, if I'm a 22-year-old dental nurse and I've been called into a meeting and I know that my performance hasn't been great, and we don't start off with, okay, at the end of this meeting, I want to get us to the point where we've done this, this, and this, so that you can go forward and you can succeed. Is that okay? Right? Then all the defenses go down. Because the number of times I talk to people and they say, oh God, yeah, when they called me and I thought I was being fired. And you're like, no, it's a performance conversation. But that's because, a lot of younger people they don't deal with conflict. They've never been taught how to deal with it, and they don't have as much resilience as perhaps former generations did. So we've got to have that clear purpose with the whole thing. Otherwise, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot from the off.
Yeah, no, massively. One of the other things that I know you've given a lot of advice on in the past, and it's so important. Appraisals, the A word, appraisal season,
I
everyone
hate him.
gets
I
it.
hate him.
I hate him. I
I
hate
hate
him.
him.
Yeah, this is what there's not many practices I go into, I'm sure you're the same, where they go, yeah, appraisals are due next month. That's not just from the person who's having to do them, but from
Yeah,
the people who are being appraised.
yeah, yeah. Where do we start? Right. First thing is I think we have to separate development conversations from performance and remuneration conversations. And typically what happens is that how much you're going to get paid is a direct result of what you do, what happens in your appraisal, how well you've kind of done. So, excuse me, immediately, if I'm going into a conversation about my pay and being asked to be vulnerable about my performance and what my development needs are, there is not a chance in hell that I'm going to be honest. So we have to separate the two. So they're two different things. And you should be coming to that kind of annual pay review or that annual kind of like performance review with a clear set of data behind you and a list of conversations behind you. So it's the culmination. It's kind of like, right, let's see how you've done this year. What would it be like if, I mean, parents' evenings, think about the school example. If your kid is the first year at school and you didn't hear about anything until the final report, what would that be like? It would be awful, wouldn't it? But you know what it's like. They start, and then within a few weeks, you get a check-in to see how they're doing. Blah, 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 that's happening. Then you might get an interim report at Christmas, and then halfway through the next term, you get another one. And it's all about how well we're doing and how we're helping them to achieve and to move forward. So I think you've got to separate the two, and you've got to make it more frequent but shorter. So they need to, you don't need to set your structure up so it doesn't have to be a whole 45 minutes, half an hour, but you've done enough 5-10 minute check-ins with people that when you do hit that twice yearly or three quarterly kind of like sit down, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and there are no surprises. That's why people hate appraisals. And I've been in jobs before where it was like the annual bash mark over the head with all the shit that he's done in the last 12 months kind of conversation. And you sit there going, why is this the first time I'm hearing about this? So those are just a few thoughts. I mean, I just think it needs to be regular. It needs to be separated from remuneration. It needs to be a development conversation where you're then setting there, these are the three things you're going to develop in. And then one thing I've seen done really well is where you get each party to write a little commitment to the other one. So we've had a discussion for the coming year. This is what you're committing to try and achieve. And this is what I'm committing as the employer to doing to support you to help you achieve those things. And then it's an agreement. It's not like we're telling you what you need to do better at.
Yeah, because I mean, some appraisals you see almost like people scoring people, and it's kind of, it's horrible. I would dread it. I don't think I've not been appraised in about 20 years. I don't think, in all honesty, not as a traditional type of, appraisal. And it shouldn't, we want it to be a good thing. We don't want it to be a thing of dread. Let people know how the conversation's gonna go. I mean, the last few times I've done some, I've actually just given them um an email and said, look, these are kind of the areas we'll kind of cover, that we'll have a chat about. And
Mhm.
I've actually used I use Claude, which is an
Yeah.
AI transcriber. Um, and I bring in these topics so it recognizes that, the structure of the conversation.
Hmm.
Oh, and it's so much nicer to be able
Hmm.
just to
Sit and have a
flow
chat.
and have the chat, and you get, I'm not right, they're not
Hmm.
looking at what I'm writing down.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like they get nervous, about us writing things down. And yes, we're
Yeah.
transcribing it, but it's felt so much better, and
Hmm.
I've had so much more from it, from just
Yeah.
having a conversation and, using a bit of technology. Even for me as a Gen X, I can
Yeah. Yeah.
be down with
No,
the
I think
kids.
it's, yeah, down with the kids. Yeah, yeah, I don't think they're past that point. But I think that's really important that you kind of also you tee people up. And I think as leaders, we need to normalize the fact that we're going to be giving feedback, because typically what you see is when, like, especially when a new starter starts in some practices, it's like, gosh, we need to hang on to this person, so let's not try and upset them in the first 6 months. And it's like, no, you set the expect. You say, look, really glad you're here. Really believe you're going to succeed here. We're going to do everything we can to help you to succeed. But you need to understand that there is a leadership dynamic to what I do as a manager. And that means at times I'm going to push you on some things. I'm going to pull you back. I'm going to encourage you to improve in certain areas. And when I do that, it's not that I'm having a go at you. I'm trying to help you to succeed, because we've got these standards here. You wouldn't be here if we didn't believe you could achieve them, and we're going to do everything we can to support you in doing that. And then when you pull them to one side and you say, just want to give you some feedback, what I just saw was this, and tell me how you can improve it next time. Then it's not a defensive thing. It's a, like, yeah, I understand the basis on which this is taking place.
Mm. It's so important. And everything that we've been talking about, there is that superpowers that run through all of this: emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
the power of empathy, self-awareness,
Hmm.
rapport,
Yeah.
all of these things. Even, profiling people a little bit,
Hmm.
of personality types, so that we can understand each other better. So the emotional intelligence, when we did that talk, we did touch on quite a few emotional intelligence tips.
Yeah.
And I can I don't, I'm sure you see it, when people realize what the hell we're talking about when we talk about emotional intelligence. It's like no matter what situation you're in, you can apply those things.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh wow, whether it's a patient complaint, whether it's a difficult situation with a team member, whether it's at home,
Hmm.
on a personal level, it's using those things and being aware of them. They are so, so powerful, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a team day yesterday with a practice over in Sussex, and one of the things that came out of it, we did a section on, building trust, what breaks trust, etc. And then we went on to how do you give candid feedback? How do you have a conversation with somebody where you're either telling them how you feel about something they've done or a performance thing. And the comment was, look, I think we've got a pretty good team here, but actually this is going to be really helpful at home and in my social life, because having that sense of, I think the big thing for me, and I've said it before, is that not going into conversation with an open mind and curiosity, rather than feeling like you've got a point to prove. And they need to understand this. It's like, no, understand it first. See what's really going on, because you'll be surprised. And you've had this as well, when you see behavior and you think, oh, lazy or disrespectful, and you ask the question, and the person's dad died this morning, or you know something else has gone on. And sometimes it's not, I'm not sort of sugarcoating the whole thing, but understanding that position first, I think is really key, and then going through that empathy, authority plan. I mean, it's not rocket science, but once you get it, it really unlocks a lot of stuff. And you
It
know,
does,
yeah,
it does, and this is, yeah, and this, like we said, this can be applied to patients. I mean, the flip side of that talk we did was,
mhm,
um, how to, a patient, are you taking on NHS patients, and the
mhm,
patient's a bit upset because we're not,
mhm,
again, okay, take the breath, don't use no, don't shut the conversation down.
yeah,
If we're using some empathy, the whys behind it, well, as you are probably aware, there is a dental
yeah,
dental NHS crisis at the moment. Many patients can't access care. I completely understand your frustration, and I can see that it's obviously very upsetting for you.
yeah,
Empathy, we're not saying yes, we're not giving
no,
people what they want. Empathy isn't giving people what they want or giving
no,
in, or sympathy. Empathy is putting ourselves in their shoes,
yeah,
isn't it?
showing
And
that we understand how they feel or they might
yeah,
feel. Yeah,
and it is, again, it's not creeping, it's dealing with the facts, isn't it? And then giving them the reasons behind why they're going to get a big fat no in a moment, kind of thing. So that big fat no isn't actually as bad as
yeah,
it could be if it's just a
yeah,
no, isn't it? It
yeah,
goes a long way. Patients come in late, we're not able to see you today. I can understand how frustrating that is. I'm sure you've done everything you can to make sure you were here on time, and I completely,
mhm,
sympathise with the stress that that's caused. It was still not seeing you,
yeah, yeah.
and it's that kind of, building that rapport, building that connection, isn't it?
And assuming a positive intent as well. You know, you said it there, and we sure you did everything you could to be here on time because you don't know why they're late.
Oh,
You've got no clue. So just even if they have just been, tardy and they're a bit, disorganized, doesn't
mm,
matter. The fact you said that, I think is key, and it brings you what it deflates the situation to a point where you can offer an alternative and a way forward, which is the plan part, which is, however, this is what we can do for you. This is
yeah.
what we can offer you. Um, so I think, yeah, and that section you did, I really enjoyed that bit when you did it because it was like, yeah, that's the way to deal with that because you're not, no, it's like when you often hear the stories of people phoning up, did you NHS? No, or how much is an implant? And they go, Steve, how much is an implant? It's 30 grand. And it's
They
that sort of
do.
stuff.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Once you've got this toolbox of emotional intelligence, and you give it your team,
Hmm.
the results you get, and get them on board with it. It's not just, well, folks like me and you, Mark, going into practices
Wait, speak for yourself.
because we're bored. It's
Yeah,
actually, we've seen that how this works within
totally.
teams, and it works, it works so well, given that empathy.
Mm,
Um, and when you're doing the complaint handling and everything else that we have to do, it is it's fantastic, making, that patient, the the empathy that you show, and the no, if you're not taking on NHS patients, will be there.
yeah.
But what we've actually done is we've had a good conversation with this person.
Hmm.
We've explained why we're not going to be able to give them what we want.
Hmm.
And we've also empathized with them.
Hmm.
My the last thing would be, obviously, if you're going to ring round, that's great. Obviously, we want you to be able to find some care. However, if you don't, come back to us,
Hmm.
let's talk about what we can offer you.
Yeah,
Um, they remember,
yeah.
and they actually, a lot of the time, I do this with lots of practices. Sometimes I'm like, word things like this for a bit and see what results you get.
Hmm.
And they look at me like I'm mad, and I go, just humor me, because I'm just,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just humor me, because I know that when pennies start dropping, that they're able to connect with these patients and de-escalate situations. And it's lovely to see the team. And I actually think the team, that then feeds into culture, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And how people are enjoying their roles better instead of
Yeah,
being battered,
yeah.
you know.
Totally,
And
totally.
we're not paid enough to be battered or feel battered at the end of the day, are we?
No, no, nobody deserves that. And I think, some of that is, making sure that as leaders, we're buffering our teams from those things, but also giving them the tools that they can use, which would enable them to feel, more fulfilled at work. And that's where culture, I think, is really important, because you're absolutely right. It's one of those things that you build day to day. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't do it once and think, oh, great, my mouth's clean now. If you're doing culture, you've got to make sure that there is a consistent application of those key things that you want to see in the team. So again, off this team that I did yesterday, with a bunch of really good ideas, which they will use on a daily basis to build culture, to demonstrate what their values are, but not just, the words on the wall, but actually stuff that we do, because that's part of our rhythm. It's more than just a pizza and a Christmas dinner.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you said that, because I was actually having a conversation with somebody yesterday that was leaving a practice, and I was asking, why are you leaving?
Mhm.
And she said, well, final straw was, we've got the Christmas party, and we were we were told where we were going. We weren't asked what we'd like to do, which would have been quite nice. And we've been told that they'll buy the first round of drinks, and then we buy our own, and it was literally how it had been told. And she said, do you know what? I don't need them to buy me a Christmas dinner or a drink. They can, her words, she said, I felt like telling them to stick it up the bum. Um, she said, I'd actually just like them not to be rude to me, not to shout at me, not to wave a finger in my face when something goes wrong. And I'm like, I just, I just wonder how leaders and managers that behave in that way actually sleep at night. Because I feel really shit about if somebody felt like that about me.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think, you can't expect somebody to see what you've seen until they've seen it for themselves. And you can tell them, but they're not going to receive it until it means something to them. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people are under pressure, financially, clinically. So that means that they take that out on their team. They see that as acceptable. Some people were treated like that as they were coming up, and so they think, well, this is just the way that it is. I mean, I think the reasons that people do that are, there's a lot of them, but hopefully what you do by doing the stuff that you do, and that the message that we try and spread, is to say, look, there's another way of doing this, and actually it's better for everybody. Um, and it will keep you out of tribunals and employment court.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, there are ways to it, but again, okay, buying a Christmas meal, round of drinks, that's fine, all prerogative. But it's the everyday, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the I did a couple of experiments with practices when I've noticed disgruntled people,
Hmm.
and I've kind of gone, right, okay, nurses on one side, dentists on another.
Hmm.
What are your expectations and what are your non-negotiables for
Hmm.
nurses that you work with? Because that relationship is a very close relationship, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like they turn into like married couples almost sometimes, or divorced married couples sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing on the dentist list, it's, well, when I got a patient at 1:45, I want them to be bringing my patient in at 1:45. I don't want them coming down from lunch at 1:45 and going for a wee or grabbing a drink.
Yeah.
I find that disrespectful to me and my patient. And
Yeah.
then it's fair point. Have a
Hmm.
wee in your dinner hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of the time it wouldn't have been done purposely. And then the nurses on their list, you've got things like, if you're going to add another patient in, I will do it, I will stay, but
Yeah.
it would be nice to be asked.
Yeah.
And also a thank you at the end of a morning
Yeah.
would it means the world. We're not
Yeah.
talking anything that's really going to cost money.
Hmm. No, I mean the best very best things that you can do for your team are completely free. So thank yous that mean something. So, not just thanks for all your hard work today, girls or boys or whatever. It's taking something to one side and saying, I really want to thank you for today, particularly when you did that. That really meant a lot to me. So really appreciate you. Thank you very much. So saying thank you and then also listening to people's ideas and inviting their ideas. So what do you think about this? What do you think about how we should do this? Because as human beings, we have a basic human need to feel seen and to be heard. And those two things, saying thank you and listening to people, they do those two things. And so why wouldn't you do that? And even if the idea that they come up with is like something that's not workable, you still take it on board and discuss it. Interesting, right? Let's see how would that work in this situation. Then, even if you get to the point of saying, "Look, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that, but I really want you to keep bringing ideas because we are going to find some things that are going to improve stuff." Feeling seen and heard. Just say thank you and ask for ideas.
Yeah, I think that's it because, quite often as practice manager, sometimes we're in the office and I have to sometimes sort of force myself to get off my bum and walk around the building because sometimes, I mean, I'm actually in the lab room today because we've got 6 surgeries going and my office um has been quite busy as we started this and I didn't want to be disturbed even though I did get disturbed. So I'm hiding in a cubby hole and I have to get up and walk around the building and check in with people and just say hello, how are you?
Mhm.
You had a good week. Feet on the floor is still
Yeah,
so important,
yeah,
especially for management, I believe.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And
just-
genuinely listen for the answer.
yes, because we do. Sometimes we're like, us D characters are quite task. Got to do this.
Yeah,
I've got 10 minutes. I'm going to go and check in and see if everyone's all right. And
yeah.
it's like,
And
not
if
good
if they
work.
don't look like they are, they say, okay, you don't look okay. You sure? Just dig a little bit deeper. It's like that whole mental health movement thing of, how are you really?
Yeah.
Because we all say fine. I mean, it's
Mm.
being prepared to push beyond that initial response does an awful lot to unlock stuff because again, they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel heard. And if it's something you can fix, then great. If not, then it's like, right, let's talk about that later on because I don't want that you to feel that way or to have that situation continue. That's our job.
Yeah, and I think there's always something. It's I'm a big believer in yes, we have to be professional. Yes, we have to get on with our job. Um, but sometimes people can't leave things at the door because they're only
Mm.
bloody human.
Hmm.
And it's about I want people to come and talk to me about these things.
Hmm.
Come and talk to me if you're having a bit of a wobble over something that's going on. See if I can
Yep.
help. And I think that just knowing that that door's open.
Yeah.
I've we've always done, for many years now, offered our team if they're having any troubles, there is access to a local counsellor
Yeah.
and go and have a session with Lisa, not me,
Yeah.
Lisa, another Lisa.
Yeah.
Go and have a session, go and have some sessions with
Yeah.
Lisa. And we just pay for that.
Mhm.
They don't tell us what's wrong. That's
Yeah.
your business. Hopefully it might help. If it doesn't, it's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but see how you go. And we've actually turned relationships round that have been going down a little bit or
Hmm.
performance
Yeah.
from it's just kind, it's the right thing to do.
What's really interesting is you listen to Simon Sinek talk about why the youngest generation is struggling so much now. And he talks about how a lot of the social structures that we grew up with, extended family, local organizations, clubs, churches, whatever it might be, a lot of those structures are gone now, or people aren't part of them. And so the places where people had to go to get that kind of counsel, to get that kind of advice, to be able to feel supported, that all now comes into work. Work is now your social structure as much as it is anything else. And so it then becomes really important that we are aware of that because we can't be everything, but we also do need to make sure that we're open to it. But then we're signposting people to those resources, and it's great that you guys do that because I think it's such an important thing. I think everybody should have therapy. because it just helps you sort all that crap out in your head and push you in the right direction.
Oh, massively. And I do feel it, like, because that genuinely has helped with the retainment of quite a few members of the team.
Yeah. And how valuable is that just in financial terms?
Time wise of not having to recruit, and it actually makes you feel quite nice.
Yeah.
We were saying the other day, as employers, sometimes we feel like we do get trodden on in some situations. If a relationship ends and you feel like someone's really sort of screwed you over a little bit,
Yeah.
it's no reason not to continue to be good and to do good things. Whether that's paying sick pay, whether it's
Yeah.
paying for counselling, it's easy. There are people that will take advantage and use it to their advantage in a very not so nice way. But I'm like, don't want that to let me stop doing the good things for the good
Yeah.
people. I think that's really, really important. Some people think it's soft. Oh, well, you're too soft. No, I'm kind and fair.
Yeah, you've got your print. You're not going to allow somebody's bad, poor attitude and principles to change your principles, which are kindness, generosity, thinking the best, doing the best. And yet you're going to get burnt sometimes. We don't take it personally, we move on, but we're still committed to what we believe and to work and running the workplace in the way that we think is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's so important. So, Mark, what can people do to get, if they want to work with you, have an explore into what you can offer them? What do you go in, do in teams, in practices and support programs, all of that?
Yeah. Okay. So it all starts with a phone call. So I offer a complimentary session. You can get that up on my website, great-boss.com. There's a big orange button on the front page. Just click there, book a call. It's a 30-minute call. And basically, I just answer you a bunch of questions and say, look, what's going on? How can I help? And whatever issue it is that you've got, I'll then give you a roadmap about how you can then deal with that. And if you want to talk about how I can help you, then we can talk about that. What that looks like, sometimes it's kind of like one-to-one coaching, so over 90 days, and we do a weekly call, but it's all progress orientated. It's not just, sitting and having a nice chat. I will hold you to account and hold your feet to the fire, but it's all about achieving the things that you want to and you can, but not having the structure or the support to do it. And as part of that, I do team days, culture building, a lot of speaking, intensives. I even, I can come in and sort things out if things, if the crap's really hit the fan. I'm typically before HR or after HR.
I
So
know
either to
we've had a
prevent
couple of
HR from
calls.
having to be called in, or when it's all gone really, really wrong, and now all the legal stuff's done, it's like, oh gosh, we need to put the team back together. So that's typically where I sit.
And no situations, and it's. I know we've had a couple of calls, where I go, right, okay, I've got this situation. This is what I'm thinking. Is this what you would do? And did it, and it's we're not there to judge, we're just there to try and help, aren't we? And I
Absolutely.
know that what you do very much is not just calming the storm that we have sometimes, but actually rebuilding something that's more going to be more resilient for when the storms hit again, because they do. Which that's just, again, it's just such a valuable investment into your team and into our as practice managers, into our sanity as well, to be honest. Oh, thank Mark, it's been brilliant, thank you.
No worries.
It's not all about teeth all the time, guys, is it? And it's not all about compliance, and I think it's really, really good to hear about these things that are our little tools and our superpowers and all of that. So please get in touch with Mark. Have a chat. As Mark said, explore, see where it leads you. And if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch with Mark. You can get in touch via Sam, Adam. Get the support that you need, because it is so valuable and so worthwhile. Okay, we're all talked out. We managed to, I always think, how do we manage to talk for this long? But we do.
Nobody
Thank
stopped
you.
us. That's why there's nobody at the back with a 5-minute marker going up.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a really, really good session.
No
Really
worries.
enjoyed it. Thank
No
you,
worries.
everyone, for joining us, and thank you for everyone that's taken the time to listen to us in their own time. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you.